Al-sīra al-Nabawiyya, Sīrat Rasūl Allāh, or just al-sīra, is the Arabic term used for the various traditional Muslim biographies of Muhammad, from which, in addition to the Quran and trustable Hadiths, most historical information about his life and the early period of Islam is derived. Etymology. In the Arabic language, the word sīra or Sīrat comes from the verb sara, which means to travel or to be on a journey. A person's sīra is that person's journey through life, or biography, encompassing the birth, events in the life, manners and characteristics, and the death. In modern usage it may also refer to a person's resume. It is sometimes written as Sīra, Sīra, or Sīrat, all meaning life or journey. In Islamic literature, the plural form, siyar, could also refer to the rules of war and dealing with non-Muslims. The phrase Sīrat Rasūl Allāh, or al-sīra al-Nabawiyya, refers to the study of the life of Muhammad. The term Sīra was first linked to the biography of Muhammad by Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, and later popularized by the work of Ibn Hisham. In the first 2 centuries of Islamic history, Sīra was more commonly known as Maghazi, which is now considered to be only a subset of Sīra. Early works of Sīra consist of multiple historical reports, or akhbar, and each report is called a khabar. Sometimes the word tradition or hadith is used instead. Content. The Sīra literature includes a variety of heterogeneous materials, containing mainly stories of military expeditions undertaken by Muhammad and his companions. These stories are intended as historical accounts and used for veneration. The Sīra also includes a number of written documents, such as political treaties, military enlistments, assignments of officials, letters to foreign rulers, and so forth. It also records some of the speeches and sermons made by Muhammad, like his speech at the farewell pilgrimage. Some of the Sīra accounts include verses of poetry commemorating certain events and battles, while some of which are considered to be of a lesser quality and lacking authenticity. The most serious of those are the ones by Hassan ibn Thabit. At later periods, certain type of stories included in Sīra developed into their own separate genres. One genre is concerned with stories of prophetic miracles, called al-Nabawiyya. Another genre, called Fadail wa Matalib, tales that show the merits and faults of individual companions, enemies, and other notable contemporaries of Muhammad. Some works of Sīra also position the story of Muhammad as part of a narrative that includes stories of earlier prophets, Persian kings, pre-Islamic Arab tribes, and the Rashidun. Parts of Sīra were inspired by or elaborate upon events mentioned in the Quran. These parts were often used by writers of tafsir and asbab al-nuzul to provide background information for events mentioned in certain ayat. Comparison to hadith. The main difference between a hadith and a historical report is that a hadith is not concerned with an event as such, and normally does not specify a time or place. Rather, the purpose of hadith is to record a religious doctrine as an authoritative source of Islamic law. By contrast, while a khabar may carry some legal or theological implications, its main aim is to convey information about a certain event. In terms of structure, a hadith and a khabar are very similar. They both contain isnads. Thus, starting from the 8th and 9th century, many scholars have devoted their efforts to both kinds of texts equally. Also, some historians consider the Sīra and Maghazi literature to be a subset of hadith. Reception. During the early centuries of Islam, the Sīra literature was taken less seriously compared to the hadiths. In Umayyad times, storytellers used to tell stories of Muhammad and earlier prophets in private gatherings and mosques, given they obtained permission from the authorities. Many of these storytellers are now unknown. After the Umayyad period, the reputation deteriorated because of their inclination to exaggerate and fantasize, and for relying on the Israeliyat. Thus they were banned from preaching at mosques. In later periods, however, works of Sīra became more prominent. More recently, Western historical criticism and debate concerning Sīra have elicited a defensive attitude from some Muslims who wrote apologetic literature, defending its content, authenticity. For centuries, Muslim scholars have recognized the problem of authenticity of hadith. Thus, they have developed sophisticated methods of evaluating isnads. This was done in order to classify each hadith into sound for authentic reports, as opposed to weak for ones that are probably fabricated, in addition to other categories. Since many Sīra reports also contain isnad information and some of the Sīra compilers were themselves practicing jurists and hadith transmitters, it was possible to apply the same methods of hadith criticism to the Sīra reports. However, some Sīra reports were written using an imprecise form of isnad, or what modern historians call the collective isnad or combined reports. The use of collective isnad meant that a report may be related on the authority of multiple persons without distinguishing the words of one person from another. This lack of precision led some hadith scholars to take any report that used a collective isnad to be lacking in authenticity. According to W.I.M. Raven, it is often noted that a coherent image of Muhammad cannot be formed from the literature of Sīra, whose authenticity and factual value have been questioned on a number of different grounds. He lists the following arguments against the authenticity of Sīra, followed here by counter-arguments. Hardly any Sīra work was compiled during the 1st century of Islam. However, Fred Donner points out that the earliest historical writings about the origins of Islam first emerged in 6070 AH, well within the 1st century of Hijrah. Furthermore, the sources now extant, dating from the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th centuries are mostly compilations of material derived from earlier sources. The many discrepancies exhibited in different narrations found in Sīra works. Yet, despite the lack of a single orthodoxy in Islam, there is still a marked agreement on the most general features of the traditional origins story. Later sources claiming to know more about the time of Muhammad than earlier ones. Discrepancies compared to non-Muslim sources, but there are also similarities and agreements both in information specific to Muhammad and concerning Muslim tradition at large. Some parts or genres of Sīra, namely those dealing with miracles, are not fit as sources for scientific historiographical information about Muhammad, except for showing the beliefs and doctrines of his community. Nevertheless, other content of Sīra, like the Constitution of Medina, are generally considered to be authentic. Early compilations of Sīra. The following is a list of some of the early hadith collectors who specialized in collecting and compiling Sīra and Maghazi reports. Urwa ibn al-Zubayr. He wrote letters replying to inquiries of the Umayyad caliphs Abd al-Malik ibn Marwan and al-Walid I, involving questions about certain events that happened in the time of the Prophet. Since Abd al-Malik did not appreciate the Maghazi literature, these letters were not written in story form. He is not known to have written any books on the subject. Wahb ibn Munabi. Several books were ascribed to him, but none of them are now extant. Some of his works survive as quotations found in works by Ibn Ishaq, Ibn Hisham, Ibn Jarrah al-Tabari, and Abu Nu'aym al-Isfahani. Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri, a central figure in Sīra literature, who collected both Hadith and Akhbar. His Akhbar also contained chains of transmissions, or isnad. He was sponsored by the Umayyad court court and asked to write 2 books, one on genealogy and another on Maghazi. The first was cancelled and the one about Maghazi is either not extant or has never been written. Musa ibn Uqba, a student of al-Sīra, and wrote Kitab al-Maghazi, a notebook used to teach his students, now lost. Some of his traditions have been preserved, although their attribution to him is disputed. Muhammad ibn Ishaq, another student of al-Sīra, who collected oral traditions that formed the basis of an important biography of the Prophet. His traditions survived through a number of sources, most notably Ibn Hisham and Ibn Jarrah al-Tabari.